In Oishut Zion, the Rebbe explained the lengthy explanation that the part of the neshama coming down is because the avodas hatshuva. How does avodas hatshuva work and it brings tainug is by turning things around. The nefesh habaham is the goof, and the godly soul is good to begin with. That's not a chiddush. That doesn't bring tainug. The level of tshuva that Hashem, the neshama gains when it comes down, that instead of just being a tzaddik, it also gets to the level of tshuva, comes through the struggles, through the challenges, through the working with the Inyone Harishus, optional matters, L'Shem Shamayim. So now the Rebbe is going to explain. So now that we said that the main thing is to become to the level of Teshuvah, and Teshuvah is accomplished through working with the body and the Nefesh HaBahamis, so now we understand that doing that, working with the world, is not only beneficial to the world, as the Rebbe started off saying. It's not only that when you work with the world, when the Avnei Hamokim, when you take it, so you are being bringing down godliness into the lowest level of tachtoinim, direlei betachtoinim, but it's actually brings about an elevation to the person because the person becomes in the level of Baal Tshuva. We're saying this avodah brings him to the level of a Baal Tshuva. The Rebbe is going to explain that it's mostly when we do work which are not mitzvahs. When we do a mitzvah, when we do optional things, l'shem shamayim, b'chol drachecha de'ehu, that is mainly where the person struggles and does it l'shem shamayim, turns things around, becomes a Baal Tshuva, is mainly by optional matters, because by mitzvahs, the person doing a mitzvah is the godly nefesh. The Rebbe will explain it's the godly soul which comes out. But when it's been borim or rishus, optional matters, and you're doing it l'shem shamayim, over there, it's the nefesh habahamis, it's the goof that is doing it. Let's look inside. Yitzay. Al pizeh yuvon. Hayisren shebahavoida b'chol masecha l'shem shamayim u'b'chol drachecha de'eyu. So based on we just explained the day of Teshuvah, and that the Teshuvah is through working with the turning around the Nefesh HaBahamis and bringing the level of Tzechoik, so we'll understand that what's the benefit of B'chol Masech L'Shem Shemayim B'chol Drachecha De'eyu. This work, service is lo rak b'negeya l'ha'pa'ula ba'olam. It is not just as it relates to the impact on the world, elogam b'negeya l'ha'odom hanesham. That is also, and it connects to the person, to the soul. That there too, there's an advantage for the person, for the soul, for the human being, when he does l'shem shamayim b'chol drachecha, even more when he's doing Torah mitzvahs in general. Why? Ki zeh she'haneshama al yidei avidosa biridosa lamato. This, that the neshama through its service when it descends below, Nasis bechinas Baal Tshuva, she becomes in the level of Baal Tshuva, who be iker al yidei ha'avodah ba'asiyas divrei harishus l'shem shamayim. How do you become a Baal Tshuva? And Baal Tshuva is the goal. because the neshama was a tzaddik before too. The whole mile of the Yerida Tzorech Aliyah is to become a Baal Tshuva. How do you become a Baal Tshuva? It's mainly by doing the optional matters, Divrei Rishus, to doing them L'Shem Shamayim. Not so much through mitzvahs, but working with the Divrei Rishus L'Shem Shamayim. That's how the neshama becomes a Baal Tshuva, and that's the purpose of the neshamas coming down into this world to become a Baal Tshuva. Inyan, the idea is, because essentially when we do a mitzvah, even if we're not a perfect person, but when we do the mitzvah, we're a tzaddik. So it's a tzaddik doing a mitzvah. When is it the negative doing a mitzvah to making it to the level of teshuvah? That's when you do optional matters. It says all your people are tzaddikim. What does that mean? All of your people are tzaddikim. But we have some tzaddikim and we have some that are not tzaddikim. So why we say alel kulam tzaddikim? So he says because the truth is, inside us we're all tzaddikim. The neshama is a tzaddik. By every yid, the neshama is righteous. The nefesh elikis is tzaddikim. Everybody. Batam lo zehi, who? What is the reason why everybody is tzaddikim? Lefisha mitis mohusei shel kol echad me Yisrael. Because what is the true essence of every yid? Who can now Sif Yud Beis is like we said earlier in Sif Yud Beis, Nafshay ha'elikis. That's his godly soul. That's why that is the real essence of a yid, is his soul, and the soul is a tzaddik. Ukipsaktin Rambam, like the Rambam rules, Huvali Ilshom, that's brought down. The Rebbe brought it down before. That what is the true will of every Jewish person? Who lases kol ma shehu rotzon Hashem. Every yid truly wants to do what Hashem wants. That's why the Rambam says that when a person doesn't want to give a divorce and he has to, the Beis Din forces him. Because of why? Because really he wants to do. If the Beis Din Torah says he has to give a get, then really that's what he wants to do. Because really he wants to Ratzon Hashem. He says I don't want to. And you have to force him. V'kasher koifin oisei. But when you force him, Beis Din forces him. And the same thing, in Mekolchkim for sure, kasher hu atzmei koifes atzmei. This is somebody else forcing him. And the same thing is when you force yourself. What happens when you force yourself lasis eze mitzvah to do some mitzvah? So then at the time, Toshyas Yitzrei Hora, his evil inclination is weakened. And in him is revealed his true want, that he really wants to do what the Eibishter wants to do. Even though he said, I don't want to do it, but when you force him and he says, Reitzani, we say that's his neshama saying Reitzani. So what does it mean? So when he says, I want, who wants it? So we're saying that we reveal the inside, his neshama says that he wants it. Since at the time when he actually occupies himself, he's busy with Torah mitzvahs. It's revealed in him his true will of his godly soul. So at that time, he's a tzaddik. Why do we say Amech Kulam Tzaddikim? Because when you're doing a mitzvah, you are a tzaddik. Because when you do the mitzvah, it's your neshama that comes through at the time. So you are a tzaddik at the time. That's a tzaddik, Amech Kulam Tzaddikim. Because that's really who you are. And when you force yourself, or Beis Din forces you, that comes out. That's your godly soul. You're a tzaddik. Now, that doesn't mean that at the time you all of a sudden don't have any negative. You still, we're talking about you may still be involved in other things as well, which you're not a tzaddik. But in this specific doing the mitzvah, you are a tzaddik. Because the mitzvah is inspired, is the will that your neshama wants. The hagam, although shagam bisho zugufa, even at that time itself that he is doing the mitzvah. Efsher sheyihi abo yinyonim dehepech hakadusha. There could be by the person other matters which is opposite of holiness. So how is he a tzaddik? He's not. He has other negative things with him. Mikol mokoy, but nevertheless, mikivon shetam ha'amiti, she'atam ha'amiti, since the true reason, lezeshem is kayim mitzvah, for the fact that he's doing the mitzvah, who leave fish and his galabay ritzoynei hapnimi, is because in him was revealed his inner will. The nefesh elikis shines now. That's why he is doing the mitzvah. So as it connects, relates to the mitzvah that he's doing, he's a tzaddik. He may not be a tzaddik in other areas, but as far as the mitzvah goes, he's a tzaddik. And the Rebbe is going to explain that in the pasuk, when it talks about Torah mitzvahs, which is the lechem lechel ubeged lilpesh by Yaakov, he doesn't say peacefully over there. It doesn't say b'sholem. The lechem, because the bread and the beged, the Torah and the mitzvahs, there's no opposition to that, because really it's your nefesh elikis doing it. It's mizgala the nefesh elikis. Sholem means when you have a struggle and you need to win, but that's when you're doing with your nefesh habahamis. But when you're a tzaddik, when you're doing Torah mitzvahs and your inner is revealed, that's not called sholem. That's just the nefesh elikis doing it. When you're doing it l'shem shamayim, you're doing masecho, so then it needs to be b'sholem. Let's look inside. V'zeu mashe b'habakosha devenosan lilechem lechel ubeged lilbash. When Yaakov says, "Give me bread to eat and a garment to wear," which is Torah and mitzvahs, le'niskar shezayiyeh b'oifen shel sholem. It's not mentioned that this should be in the way of peace. Why? Ki inyan hasholem, because when is the idea peace? Shayich ksheyesh menaged. That only applies if there is opposition. So you have peace because there's two sides, and you make peace. But if there is no opposition, it doesn't fit to say in a peaceful way. Torah mitzvahs that a yid is mekayim, there's no opposition because that's the nefesh elikis there. He brings the example from the pasuk. Inyan podo b'sholim nafshi. What does it mean? He redeemed with peace. Why did it be with peace? Because there was a fight over there, mikrovli. Podo b'sholim nafshi hashayich ligeula the Yud Kislev, which is also connected to the geula of Yud Kislev. Because the Perik of Tehillim of Perik Nun Hey is in Yom Yud. Shezeu mitzad k'moishemam shel b'kosav. Why does he say b'sholem? Pasuk says mikrovli, because there was a fight, so it's b'sholem. V'lochein, and therefore, why is there no sholem? K'moi shabet tzadik ein shayich loymar she'avidosei hi b'sholem. Just like by regular tzaddik, full tzaddik, not the person that is a tzaddik just for this mitzvah, while he's doing the mitzvah, but a tzaddik in general. Ein shayich loymar she'avidosei hi b'sholem. It doesn't fit to say that his service is in a way of shalom because there is no struggles there. He doesn't have to make peace between opposing. There is no opposing forces. The tzaddik conquered his yetzer hara, and he doesn't have to deal. He doesn't have to work. It's not in a peaceful way. There's no opposition. So just like by a tzaddik, ein shayich loy mashavedos b'sholem, mikivon she'ein loy yetzer hara klal. He has no yetzer hara. There's no opponent. Derech zehu gam b'Torah mitzvahs, which is the lechem ubeged, similar to Torah mitzvahs, lechem beged, the kol echad mi Yisrael by every yid. Mikivon shebesho zu oimed begilui harotzin the nefesh elikis. Since at that time when he's doing Torah mitzvahs, what is openly is the rotzin of the nefesh elikadli soul. But Torah mitzvah she'oisa, and the Torah mitzvah that he does, who mitzad rotzin ha-neshama, is because the neshama wants that. That's bechinas tzaddik shaboy. That's the tzaddik in him. So when he's doing it in a tzaddik, it's not in a peaceful way because there's no opposition, and that's why we don't say by the lechem ubeged. Yaakov doesn't say b'sholem. We'll see in the next ois. The Rebbe will say that in Zman HaGolus, we still have plenty of challenges, even though the Rebbe says everything is begolui and you do the neshama is begolui, but still, we'll see later on. But in the way the Rebbe explains now, Torah mitzvahs, you're a tzaddik. Every time you do Torah mitzvahs, there's no opposition. On the other hand, when we have to deal with the Gashmis, the world, the Shem Shemayim, Masha Enke, as opposed to when he deals with matters that are optional, not in the way of mitzvah. So why is he doing these things? They are the needs of the body, the sustaining and the energy vitalizing of the body. So you need physically. You're doing its maasecho. You have to eat. You have to drink. You have to sleep. There is necessary needs that the guf needs. That's our maasecho. Or even there are things that you may not need for your bodily need, but you have an animal soul that wants them. Who naturally, in its nature, yearns, desires worldly matters, the matters of this world. So he is occupied and he's doing things because his body and because of his nefesh habahamis. Hamalemes umasteres al nafshoy halikis, which obscures and blocks his godliness. Lochein, and therefore, so therefore, when he's occupying himself in these optional matters, l'shem shamayim, in a way that you know Hashem through these actions, this is similar to the work of teshuvah. So you are basically doing teshuvah. You are taking and this is the purpose of the creation. So the person gets elevated much more when he does optional matters, which have opposition, which is part of the opposition, and he turns it around. That brings to the level, that's like the level of tshuva, that brings to the person to the higher level that we're talking about. So according to what the Rebbe explained now, the main avodah of teshuvah, the return, is to change around not when you're doing a mitzvah, you're doing it because of the nefesh elikis. That's why you're always Reitzani, that's what the nefesh kiss. But when you're doing optional matters, you're doing things which block, which obscure godliness, and still you're doing it. That's returning. That's the level of teshuvah. But the Rebbe explains now that really in Ois Yud Ches, that really the same thing could be with Torah mitzvahs. You can also have the teshuvah when it comes in a real way of a struggle, notwithstanding the fact that everything is from the nefesh alikis, because that's the real rotzin of the person. Yud Ches Chai. In a general more way, specifically, it's the avodah b'chol drachecha and kol masecha l'shem shamayim. But in a more general way, gam ha'avodah de Torah mitzvahs, also the service of Torah mitzvahs. Kasher hi ba'ofen kazeh, when it's such a way, sha'odam tzorich lichbash es yitzrei, that the person needs to conquer his inclination. Ubefrat bizman hagolus, especially when we're talking the time of exile. There is many preventions, many holdbacks. Al esek Torah mitzvahs, on the occupation of Torah mitzvahs. And you need to overcome them. You need to overpower those obstacles, those preventing, and those stop blocking you. Hu b'chlal avodas hatshuvah. That is also included in the avodas hatshuvah. Not only the optional matters, but even Torah mitzvahs that come through a struggle in a more general way are also part of the Avodas Hatshuvah. Ubezeh Yuvon, the Rebbe is going to answer like a perplexing piece of Zohar, because the Zohar quotes from the pasuk, but first he brings down B'shafti b'sholem, and then he says Nosan lilechel ubeged lilbash. But in truth, in the pasuk it says first B'nosam lilechem lechel ubeged lilbash. Then it says B'shafti b'sholem. Why does it say B'shafti b'sholem first? And the Rebbe explains because the Zohar is talking about when we struggle to do Torah mitzvahs in the time when there's a level of people are poor, they don't have this wide understanding and godliness. Over there it starts with Sholem. The Rebbe explains. So now we can understand what this, that the Zohar says, Sheksharo Yaakov ha'anius v'atzar, that when Yaakov saw the poor, the pain, sheyiyah b'zman ha'kolus Edom, that is going to be in the time of the exile of Edom, which this is the Golus we're in, the 4 Goliaths, we're in the 4th Golus Edom. Ubefrad b'seiv zman ha'golus, especially in the end of the time of the Golus. Omar, he says, V'shafti b'sholim el beis ovi. So then he says, I will return in peace to my father's home. V'omar, this is quoting from the Zohar, V'nosen li lechem lechel, ubeged lilbash. So Yaakov says, he will return peaceful to the home and give lechem lechel, beged lilbash. Beinim muvan, it's not understood. Now, the pasuk is the reverse order. It says, V'nosen li lechem goimer. First, give me bread, and then it says, I will return in peace. So how come the Zohar is magdim and says first, shafti b'sholem, and then he says, why? So the Rebbe explains like this. We can say the explanation. The Mekiva shebezoyhar shom medaber beinyan ha'anius v'atzar dizman hagolus. The Zohar talks over there about the situation in a matter in which we are poor and we're in pain that takes place in the time of Golus. The struggles that we have in times of Golus. Over here, it's necessary to have first the level of peace, the level of teshuvah, before we even start the avodah of Torah mitzvahs. We start with teshuvah, and then we go to Torah mitzvahs. This whole interpretation of the Zohar is a third interpretation, that Yaakov goes out from Beersheba before we learned going out from the level of Chochmah, going from Bina, coming to Bia. Here we're talking, no, we're going into exile. And then also nasan lilechem lechel ubeged lilbush, within the confines, within the struggles. But over there we say shalom first. Let's see. Shahu pirush lishi beinya. This is a third interpretation in the idea by Yitzay Goimer, by Yitzay Yaakov, and Beersheva, by Yelech Harana. When in this interpretation, he's not going from Chachma to Malchus, from Bina to Malchus to the Spheres. Sheyitziv alicha zuhi loy mibchinas Bina leMalchus. It's not going from Bina to Malchus. V'gam loy mibchinas Malchus leBiyah, and not going from Malchus to Biyah. These are very high madreges, going to Malchus and going from Malchus to Biyah. Ki beis hapirushim shuvu li'il Siv Gimel, like the two interpretation brought before in Siv Gimel. Ki im lizman hagolus. This interpretation of the Zohar, we're talking time of exile. Zehu gam ki mashom razal, which also fits going to Choron, also fits with the saying of our sages of blessed memory. Shechoron inyan charen af shel mokem ba'olam. Choron is the anger of Hashem in the world. That's why it's called Choron. Choron means anger. Charoin af. So going to Choron means going into the place which Hashem is angry with because they're opposition to Hashem. The inyan zehu beikar bizman hagolus. That idea of going to the Charoin af shel mokem is mainly in the Golus, which there is a very deep and strong Golus. L'chein magdim v'shavti b'sholem. That's why in the Zohar it says first v'shavti b'sholem goymer lifnei v'nosen li lechem goymer u'beged goymer. Before he says he'll give me the lechem and the beged, he says b'sholem. Why? Ki mitzad ha'alomes v'ha'asterim dizman hagolus. Because of the obstacles, the blocks, the obscurity at the time of Golus. Basically, the challenges, the dark time of the Golus. Gam ha'avoda, the Torah mitzvahs, even the service of Torah mitzvahs, which is the lechem u'beged, he al yidei hakdomas inyan hatshuva, comes through first the level of tshuva, v'shavti b'sholim. It comes through the level of tshuva. Shekoilel canal, which includes, what does it mean? B'sholem, we said that includes ha'hizgabrus al ha'maniyas v'ikuvim, to overcome the things that prevent and stop you. So you have to start with tshuva, because b'shavti b'sholem is not just working with optional matters. The Rebbe says in the beginning of this ois, that even Torah mitzvahs that come with a struggle can also be counted as part of the avodah that is considered to be b'sholim. So therefore, we have to start with tshuva, and then we say v'nosan li lechem lechel ubeged lilbesh. We start with sholim. But ubekosov nemar, but the pasuk is talking about v'nosan li lechem goymer ubeged lifnei v'shavti b'sholim. Over there, it's talking about in the regular way, not in the struggles of the golus. It says v'nosan li lechem before v'shavti b'sholim. Ki ha'inyan de vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheva vayelech harana ki Moshe b'chol der v'der. Because the normal way, when Yaakov goes from Beersheva going to Choron, as it is in every generation, Gam Lifnei Hagolus, also before the exile, Hu Yeridas HaNeshama Lamato B'chlal. That's talking generally the soul coming down below Hayirid the Golus. We're not talking specifically about Golus. So there's a different order then. When we talk about the descent of the neshama, how is the order of things? So first, we start with Torah mitzvahs, and then we go to the optional matters, which is inyan ereshus umekiv anshem bizman habayis havoida ditshuva hiabirud inyan ereshus. During the time of the Beis Hamikdash, what is tshuva? Sorting out optional matters. In Golus, even Torah mitzvahs are sholem, are tshuva. So we have to start with sholem, with tshuva, before we do mitzvahs. But in the Zman HaBayis, the avodah tshuva is optional matters. Mashenkin avodah the Torah mitzvahs hi bechlolus, avodah tzadikim, but Torah mitzvahs in general the avodah tzadikim because amech kulam tzadikim because it's all the nefesh elikis. But in any way, the general avodah in the time of the Beis Hamikdash is tzadikim. First, he says Torah mitzvahs. He doesn't say first Shavti b'Sholem the level of Tshuva. But the contrary, lechem comes first. That comes before I return peace. After the avodah of Torah mitzvahs, which has a connection, belongs to nefesh elikis. Oz davke, only then, davke efsher liyes habirur dinyon rishus. Then we can sort out the optional matters. Shavti b'sholem. So you start v'nosem l'lechel, then shavti b'sholem. Al derech maimer Razal, similar to the saying of our sages of blessed memory, Keshoit atzmecha, judge yourself, then judge others. So make yourself truthful before you make others. So the Rebbe explains the Zohar, that the Zohar says Vishavti b'Sholem because it's talking in Zman HaGolus. In the Zman HaGolus in which the struggle, the idea of Teshuvah, and the idea which is Sholem, which is struggle is even before Torah mitzvahs. So you start with that and then you do Torah mitzvahs. But the order, the way Yaakov talks about, he talks about the general descent. Even in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, every generation, the neshama's descent is first Torah mitzvahs. You got to start with Torah mitzvahs, and then like and then you can go ahead and be mevader the world. So you first have to do not only lechem lebeged lil besh Torah mitzvahs, and then you do v'shavti b'sholem. So, while the Rebbe explains that previous ois we learned that the main tshuva is optional matters, because in Torah mitzvahs matters is the neshama mainly functioning. But in this ois, the Rebbe explained in ois Yud Ches, the Rebbe explained that in the time of Golus, even the regular mitzvahs is also the idea of teshuvah, the idea of Shavti b'Sholem. And that's how he explains in the Zohar, that the Zohar says first V'shavti b'Sholem in the Zman HaGolus, and normally in the Zman HaBayis, or B'chol Deir V'Deir, over there is first Torah mitzvahs, and then is V'shavti b'Sholem. Okay, we'll leave it over here, and we'll be mamshich, okay?
Bye.